with regard to Islam and Muslim civilization, which emerged in the 6th century with the birth of Muhammad in 570, I want you to remember that, first of all, Islam in its early development and growth, and it spread very quickly. It spread to encompass the area from almost India into France, all of North Africa. In that spread, in that growth, Islam was very tolerant originally. It treated Christians, Jews, very tolerant because it wanted the taxes from them. Part of Islam was the Muslims were not taxed themselves. Taxes were levied on non-Muslim inhabitants. So that was one of the reasons why it spread, because if you were conquered and you didn't want to pay taxes, you converted to Islam. But for the people who didn't convert, they were tolerated because they paid taxes. And as a result, Islam itself proved to be a synthesizing civilization. It synthesized the cultural achievements of Persians, Christians, Jews, Spaniards, the Near East, Mesopotamia, Egyptians, and the Arabs of Arabia, because it conquered all these, and then it encouraged the inter-migrations. It encouraged everybody to use Arabic, and as a result, it was this great synthesizing force in the Middle East. The other thing I want you to remember about Islam is the so-called 5 pillars of Islam, or the 5 basic beliefs that made up the religion. And the first being the declaration of faith, that there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger of God. This is your base. This is the starting ground, the bedrock on which Islam was built, the declaration of faith. The second of these 5 pillars would be prayer. You were required to pray 5 times a day in the direction of Mecca. The third of these pillars, fasting during Ramadan. Alms, the giving of alms would be the fourth. And finally, the pilgrimage to Mecca one time in your lifetime to the Kaaba, the sacred temple. The other thing I want you to remember about Islam is that Muhammad saw himself as a continuation of Christianity and Judaism. Islam was also a religion of the book, its holy book, the Quran, like the New Testament and Old Testament. Muhammad considered himself to be the last prophet in a long line of prophets. Where he differed with Christianity, where Islam differed with Christianity, was the fact that, first of all, Muhammad did not consider Christ to be divine. Muhammad considered the idea of the Trinity to be paganistic. How can you have 3 gods? There is only one God. He borrowed from Christianity the idea of the Last Judgment. He borrowed from Judaism the strict observance of law, all the laws, rituals, and regulations of the Old Testament. He did not borrow from Christianity the idea of a clerical or ecclesiastical church or hierarchy. There was no church structure that arose in Islam for the most part. One other thing about Islam was that despite its rapid growth and spread, Islam itself divided into sects. There were disagreements within Islam after Muhammad's death. And the 2 dominant sects that eventually emerged were the Sunnites, or Sunni Muslim, and Shiites, or Shiite Muslim. And the issue originally over which they diverged was the successor to Muhammad, the office of Caliph, or Khalifa, the representative of the Prophet, the leader who ruled Islam after the death of Muhammad. And originally, Muhammad's close friend was elected the caliph. But after a series of succession crises, a man by the name of Ali, who was the husband of Muhammad's daughter, became caliph. And eventually there were some more civil wars after that too. But what happened was religious followers divided along two lines. Sunnites, or Sunni Muslims, believed that the representative, the caliph, should be elected by everybody, all members of the religion. Anybody could be elected to the supreme head of the religion. And they also believed that traditions, practices outside of the Quran were valid. So, Sunni, anybody elected as caliph, traditions also valid. Shiites believed that the only person who could be caliph was a member of Muhammad's family or a descendant of Muhammad himself. And they also believed that only what was written in the Quran was valid. Anything else was invalid. You couldn't take it as a basis of some sort of faith or whatever. So these two sects within Islam split separate ways, and the Shiites themselves became much more militant and intolerant in their beliefs in regards to non-believers eventually.